all and welcome. My name is Margaret. I'm a historical costumer and textile conservator in training, and I am back. So I haven't been posting on this channel very much in 2022. I think there's only been like 3 videos so far. And that's because I was finishing up my second year of grad school. I am going to talk about textile conservation grad school and what that all entails in an upcoming video, but I had a lot of grad school work that needed to be done, so I didn't post during the spring. And then over the summer, I was actually in Scotland. So I wanted to film bits for you all during that period of time, but I also wanted to really spend my time exploring Scotland and the UK. And also, I moved out of Delaware apartment by myself and I moved to New York by myself. I'm currently in New York City for my 3rd year internships. So the surroundings have changed. I actually filmed this intro once before and I was like, the lighting is so bad. So we have new lighting, and I'm really excited to enjoy New York and explore more. I've been here for about 3 weeks. So it's been a whirlwind. So the remainder of this video is going to be about 50 minutes of me moving out of my apartment in Delaware, going home, going to Cincinnati for work, having a layover in Toronto, going to Glasgow, my tours around the UK, going to Portugal on a layover, and then coming here to New York City. So hopefully you enjoy my 50 minutes of vacation photos and voiceover overlay. And if you're not into that, I will be back twice a month. That is my plan, because once a week it's just a little too much for me. I have, my full-time internship, and I like to, go out and live life as well. And as a channel that produces some sewing content, that also takes up a lot of my time, is making things for this channel. We will be talking about the things that we've always been talking about: historical costumes, the sewing content. My next project is coming up quite soon, but I'm also going to start talking a little bit more about textile conservation and textile conservation education. So if you were interested in any of those topics, you can of course subscribe down below. You can like this video if you liked it. You can follow me over on Instagram and TikTok. I haven't been super active on TikTok lately, but that might be changing as well. So I hope to see you very soon, and please enjoy my adventures throughout last summer. Hello everybody. So I thought I would film me moving, because I'm going to be moving a lot. So I thought I'd take you guys along on this journey, because I am doing this essentially solo. As you can see, it's hot here in Delaware. It's been hot for the last couple of days, and I have been basically moving my entire 1-bedroom apartment by myself into storage. I'm going to be going to Scotland for the summer, and then I'm off to New York City for the year. So everything needed to go in storage. I will say, props to my parents. They came a couple weekends ago and took most of the big furniture, so that was great. Tomorrow I have an 18-hour drive back home. I'm doing it all in one day because I have some contract work that I'm doing that starts like immediately afterwards. So that should be fun. I have completed an important step in the move-up process, which is I went to Sprouts and I got all of my gluten-free snacks for the road. We have 18 hours tomorrow, and the key is to keep eating. You gotta have your body working, doing something, and digesting food is one of those. And since I have celiac disease, unfortunately, gas stations aren't like the best. So got myself some good snacks. So we'll be munching on those tomorrow. Hi! It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm starting my drive. I'm in the clothes I was in yesterday for the most part. It's gonna be a fun 18 hours. I will talk to you when we're in Pennsylvania, I think. My friend let me stay over last night, which was amazing, so let's get started. So I made it to Pennsylvania. I just drove through Pittsburgh since they closed off part of the, what is it called? The Turnpike, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So I actually drove through Pittsburgh this time. I've done this drive. This is my 4th time doing this drive. This was my 1st time doing this drive alone. So we're on hour 5. We're almost out of Pennsylvania. First pit stop. I would have loved to get some B-roll of the cute little lambs, the baby lambs and the baby cows, but I have to be a safe driver. So can't use my phone while driving. But woken up finally. I'm gonna go into this gas station, use the restroom, maybe get a drink, get some more water, because I only have like 2 Izzies left. But it'll be good. We're gonna keep going. My sister is actually doing this drive with me too. She's just in a different car. She's about 15 miles behind me, so yes. On to Ohio. Hello again. I made it through Ohio. Now I'm in Indiana. I'm almost out of Indiana. I'm filling up my car before I go through Chicago, because there aren't any exits in Chicago for gas. Pro tip, if you are ever driving the interstate from Delaware to Minnesota, fill up before Chicago. Guess the next place to fill up is in Wisconsin, if you need to know that. Yeah, it's been really boring. The turnpike in Ohio is kind of a snooze fest, but that's okay. Probably check back in with you again in Wisconsin. How many hours do I have left? I have like 7 hours left, 7.5 hours left, so we still got a ways. Hello, we're on hour 15 now. I think we have 3 hours left. I am finally in Wisconsin. Well, not finally, I've been in Wisconsin for a while. I'm at Wisconsin Dells, which, I'll be honest with you, not my favorite place in the entire world, mostly because I've never been to a water park here. I've only ever driven through it on sad rainy days like this, so I got myself a celebratory milk because I'm in Wisconsin, officially back. We're nearing Minnesota. It'll be good. As you can tell, I'm shot already, but I have it in me to do the rest of this tonight because I gotta go to work tomorrow. So I will see you in Minnesota.
I had a lovely time in Minneapolis, hanging out with my family and friends. I was constantly working and or socializing, so I didn't get any footage for you all, but needless to say, it was lovely. And then, of course, it was off to Cincinnati for work. I landed in Cincinnati for 4 days of an exhibition stall. I'd actually never been to Cincinnati. I didn't realize it was right next to Kentucky, but I actually had a really lovely time there. I stayed at the 21C Hotel for most of my stay. This is kind of an interesting museum hotel experience where they have a bunch of contemporary art installations all around the hotel. I got to explore some of Cincinnati, but I was mostly working the entire time. But I did get a few hours off to go to the Cincinnati Art Museum, also known as CAM, and I was really impressed by their collection. They had a lot of European and American arts and also a couple galleries completely dedicated to the art of Cincinnati. Very well put together. I even saw a piece by my favorite artist, which is of course Vigée Lebrun. I always perk up when I see a Vigée Lebrun. I also really enjoyed this lovely carved wood bookcase. There's a lot of carved wood. I believe it was a staple of Cincinnati at some point. Don't quote me on that. I don't read anything at museums. I'm a horrible museum employee. They also had this lovely 13th century Italian wooden bench that you could sit on, and I don't need to tell you that I took them up on that offer, because when I'm allowed to touch something, I do it. I was sad to leave Cincinnati and the wonderful installation team. They were fabulous, but it was on to my next adventure. I did end up going to New York City for a week to wait my visa. It hadn't quite come yet. And of course, first thing you do when you land in New York City and you have celiac disease, you go and get yourself a gluten-free bagel and then you walk yourself to the Met. I, of course, was there to see an anthology of fashion as well as a few other things. This is actually my first Met Costume Institute, and I gotta say it was quite lovely. If you really want to have a fun time, drink every time I say lovely if you're of age and of sound mind. They had some garments from some iconic American figures, including the coat that George Washington was inaugurated in, and this lovely gown for Mary Todd Lincoln by Elizabeth Keckley. They also had a few great cases exploring more in-depth sort of scientific analysis and conservation work, including this lovely 1860s moire gown. The mounting of the fencing gallery was absolutely incredible. As a person who does do costume mounting as part of their job, I can't even imagine the problem solving that goes into looking like something's in motion. There was also a very touching tableau to the 20th century African American designer Anne Lowe. Her work is finally getting some well-deserved praise. I also thought the glasses on the table was just so touching. After leaving the exhibition, I of course went around the permanent galleries as one does at the Met. There was a great gallery of English Spitalfield silks in the British galleries with this lovely robe à la française alongside of it. I also popped into a lexicon of fashion. This focused mostly on contemporary fashion, but there was this wonderful 1940s work uniform. If I got to go to work in that, I'd be one happy camper. And this wonderful Bonnie Cashin situation. I love a Bonnie Cashin pocket. I'm a Bonnie Cashin stan. Just know that about me. This was a very busy day of museum going for me. I go hard when I'm alone, as you can probably tell. I also saw kimono style. This was a really fabulous exhibition. Obviously a lot of kimonos, but there was also some Western kimono-inspired garments, including this early men's patchwork dressing gown, quite a few tea gowns, embroidered dressing gowns. I mean, it was gorge. And of course, the Schiaparelli Harlequin coat, which is iconic and also is seemingly following me around. On a different day, I of course got a bubble tea, and I went off to the Strand bookshop. I love the Strand. I always go there when I'm in New York City. Now that I live here, it's a constant temptation, but I was very good, and I only got one small book, because I did lug that around all summer. That book went to many different countries. Honestly, for my week in New York City, I spent a lot of time exploring and hanging out with my friends and family. I managed to take a completely free week and fill it up with social engagements. Another day, when I was on my own, I stopped by the National Museum of the American Indian down in Lower Manhattan. I had an internship with NMAI in 2019 at the DC branch, but I'd actually never seen the New York Museum, so I thought I would pop in. It was, of course, lovely. They do such a good job, and I highly recommend visiting that museum if you are in New York. I also won a Wednesday matinee lottery ticket to the musical Moulin Rouge. It was definitely all glitz and glam and a lot of confetti. Finally, I stopped by FIT to see their Dior and Balenciaga show. I actually worked on a 1939 Balenciaga evening gown for my second year in grad school. And you can actually read about that treatment. I will link a blog post that my school put out down below if you want to learn more about that and what I do. But it was very exciting to see more work by Balenciaga and, of course, Christian Dior, who is also one of my favorite mid-century couturiers. Both of these designers were just very, very good with textiles and silhouettes. I mean, look at those feathers. Gorgeous. And all around, just a feast for the eyes. I also really enjoyed this smock made by Cristobal Balenciaga for his workroom. He would wear it around. And surprise, surprise, I got another bubble tea in Koreatown.
Hi again. It's my last full day in New York. I just went to FIT and saw the Balenciaga Dior show, which was good. And then got a bubble tea because I've been getting so much bubble tea. I don't really know how this happened, but I had a completely clear week where I was not supposed to be here, and somehow I managed to fill it completely with social events. Tomorrow, I'm headed out to Glasgow finally. After a week of waiting for my passport, it's here, which is very exciting. Actually doing a full 21 hours in Toronto, so I will see you when I leave New York.
And finally, after weeks of waiting for this visa, I was able to go to Glasgow via a one-day layover in Toronto and then Halifax.
Morning. So I'm going to spend most of today in Toronto, and then I am going to go to Glasgow. Well, Halifax and Glasgow.
So for my day out on the town in Toronto, I picked two museums, the Royal Ontario Museum and the Bata Shoe Museum. The Royal Ontario Museum is sort of one of those national-style museums. We don't really have them in the States, but they're very prevalent in Europe, especially in the UK. And this museum is filled with not only art and decorative arts, but also natural history and dinosaurs. Unfortunately, they weren't showing any of their costume collection, and they do have a lovely costume collection. But I was very intrigued to see their period room sort of behind glass, more like a natural history context and less of a art museum context. Filming was not allowed in the Bata Shoe Museum, so you're going to have to put up with my subpar iPhone photography. But I do highly recommend this if you're into shoes. It was impeccable. They did have sort of an open fishbowl conservation lab, but it was Saturday, so no one was working. I do feel bad for conservators who have to be on display all the time, but also, I'm very interested. One of their special exhibitions was on 18th century shoes, which is one of my favorite periods of fashion, so that was a delight. Afterwards, I, surprise, surprise, got a bubble tea and I walked around Toronto. I crashed a 100th birthday party for a hardware store and, of course, popped into a vintage shop. All of the things you would expect me to do on my day out. And then it was back to the airport and on to Halifax. I had a quick turnaround in Halifax. Unfortunately, I got zero sleep on the plane since I was in the dead back right next to the bathroom. It was horrible. I landed in Glasgow at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. I started work on Monday. I crashed at my Airbnb and slept all day and all night. I'm pretty sure my Airbnb host was really confused why I would do that to myself, and honestly, I'm confused why I did that to myself. But anyway, went to work on Monday. It was all fabulous. Or it turned out to be fabulous after I got over the jet lag in a week. And now, a non sequitur transition to my adventures in Scotland and the UK at large. So one thing I learned about myself during this entire ordeal was that I love Highland cows. And they're beautiful, and I love their little squishable faces, and I want one. But it's also a whole cow, so I got a stuffed animal instead. There were Highland cows in Pollock Park. I was living right next to Pollock Park, so I got to go see them quite often, which was fabulous for me. In Pollock Park, there's also the Burrell Collection, which is absolutely gorgeous. They have some wonderful textiles in there, and I even spotted Isabel of Prior attire, which was a fun time. I was like, who is that? I was like, oh, it's Isabel of Prior attire. I follow her Instagram account. I also swung by Calvin Grove, which is another all-rounder museum like the Royal Ontario Museum. I saw some lovely textiles, including these 18th century dresses. Also in Glasgow, I saw the 1,000-year-old Glasgow Cathedral, which I also saw the famous cone-headed Duke of Wellington outside of Goma. He is fabulous and I love him. I also got to tour Edinburgh a couple of times. The first time I went with a new friend that I made at the Airbnb, and we hung out on Carlton Hill. Carlton Hill? We hung out on Carlton Hill. I swear, if you want me to pronounce Scottish names correctly, you're gonna have a hard time with this. The next weekend, I took a solo train trip up to Inverness because I wanted to see the Scottish Highlands and look for the Loch Ness Monster. The train ride was gorgeous. I highly recommend going in the daytime so you can look at all the splendor. I went and took the bus up to the battlefield at Culloden. It was just a field, but I had a lovely tour and I saw the Clan Fraser stone because Outlander. And it was just a really lovely day out. It was highly un-Scottish weather. Sunny, 80 degrees. I walked around, took in the splendor of the field, and got some dinner and went back. On my next day in Inverness, I took another bus out to Loch Ness to Castle Urquhart. I took a bus out to see Castle Urquhart, which is a medieval ruin on the shores of Loch Ness. I did not see the Loch Ness Monster. It's very sad, but it was a gloriously un-Scottish weather day. Again, sun was shining, not a cloud in the sky. Windy as I'll get out, but I'll take that over raining. I got to look around the castle, take in the sights, see the loch, and all around just have a very nice day. There were a lot of screaming children, but I got over that. And then it was back to Glasgow on the afternoon train. I would just like to highlight what actual Scottish weather looks like. This is me in my summer outfit, and my supervisor took this photo and she said, "Show your family what a Scottish summer looks like." The next weekend, my cousin came to visit me. She was doing some conferences on the continent, and she came over to Scotland to visit me, which was very nice. We took the bus to the train, to the ferry, to the bus, to go to the Isle of Bute and the Mount Stewart Estate. Now, the Mount Stewart Estate is right on the water, so we got to go along the beach and also tour the medieval revival Victorian mansion, which was amazing. It's one of those places that doesn't seem real, to be honest.
Me too.
We then went back to Edinburgh to visit the Edinburgh Castle, and I got to see the National Museum of Scotland, another all-rounder museum like the Royal Ontario Museum, but I spent most of my time in the fashion gallery, of course. They had costume from the 17th century to present day, and I was totally geeking out the entire time. Basically, this entire trip was me geeking out, let's be real. I love this Courrèges dress and this ethereal pink early 20th century number. I also paid special attention to this 17th century waistcoat as it was part of my research for the summer. Just want to highlight here that I had a wonderful time at my internship, and my supervisor and everyone I worked with was very lovely, and they let me do fun things like vacuuming and doing amazing research. I took a day and I went out to Stirling to see Stirling Castle. This castle is famed for being the home of Mary Queen of Scots and also being the site of a battle that William Wallace took part in. The gardens here were particularly beautiful, and although it was a very Scottish misty day, that surely did not dampen the beauty. I also decided to swing by Pollock House in Pollock Park and of course say hello to my favorite Highland cows. I was also extremely lucky during my internship to take a few days off and travel down to the Bose Museum. The Bose Museum is located in Edinburgh Castle, which is a lovely little town, and they have a wonderful collection of costume and textiles. They have reproductions by Luca Castigliano. If you're in the costuming community, you probably know that name. He's amazing at what he does. And they also had Empress Eugenie of France's stuff. They had a collection of her things, including her ice skates, which I thought was really random but also really awesome. I had a lovely lab visit here, and they had a great collection of paintings and ceramics and decorative art, and also a silver automaton swan, which is kind of the marquee object of the museum. I do highly recommend going to the Bose Museum if you are in the area, or even if you're not in the area. It's definitely worth the trip. I also went around the town of Edinburgh Castle, getting some ice cream. They did not have bubble tea, and seeing their ruin of a medieval castle, going antiquing, and of course just having a fun day out. Then it was off to Durham. I was stranded in Durham for a whole day because of the train strikes, but never fear, I made the best of it. I was staying at the Durham Castle, which is a 1,000-year-old castle and also a 1960s style college dorm. But it was still quite magical, let me tell you. Also, surprisingly inexpensive. I toured the Durham Cathedral while I was there and saw the oldest arches in England, as well as climbed my way up the church tower and got some wonderful views of the city. After that, and going shopping around the medieval town center, they had some lovely bookstores there. I went out to Crook House and Gardens. This was absolutely magical, one of the most magical places I've ever been. A little medieval house with these fairy tale-like gardens. I got to witness golden hour in the field and then went back, had something to eat, and slept in the 1,000-year-old castle. Back in Glasgow for my final weekend, I saw the Hunterian Museum and Gallery, as well as the University of Glasgow, and I spent a day traveling back to Edinburgh. I popped into Holyrood Palace. They had some wonderful textiles, including tapestry and embroideries, of course, lovely gardens, and the ruins of a medieval cathedral. What more could you want? I hiked up Arthur's Seat. It was a short, somewhat steep hike. The views were very nice, and my dad actually called me while I was walking up there. It was a very funny conversation because I was huffing and puffing, and he was like, "I'm glad you're working out." I was like, "Thanks, Dad." Now, following the theme of being way too vigorous with my travel schedule, after work on Friday, I jumped on the overnight train to London and had a wonderful day out in Oxford with my friend Kaylee. Would highly recommend Oxford. Absolutely stunning. Now, it was down to London for a week of lab tours, museum visits, and a little bit of research before my mother came to join me. I had a wonderful visit at the Museum of London where I got to see some of their costume collection, including their wonderful Pleasure Garden gallery with this awesome 1860s archery gown. I popped by the Wallace collection and saw another wonderful Vigée Lebrun, as well as some iconic French portraiture and the Disney exhibition. The John Sloan Museum was a shifting puzzle box of delights. And for one of my final days in London solo, I went out to Hampton Court Palace. They have some absolutely lovely tapestries there, one of the best tapestry collections in the world, in my opinion. And the gardens are also spectacular. This palace in particular is really interesting because it's both a Tudor palace and also a Georgian palace, so you kind of get two in one. The Royal School of Needlework is also there, so I had to pop into their gift shop, and I also got more ice cream. I decided to pop over to the continent for a day, and I went to Lille, France. I saw their wonderful art museum there. It's actually an art museum started in the early 19th century by Napoleon. I walked around, I saw their gardens, there was a zoo, it was a good time, and I was really proud of myself. I ordered a bubble tea in French. Well, not in French, but in France. The man did speak English. Anyway, I had a bubble tea. Then my mom joined me for a week. We saw the Tower of London before we hit the road, and we drove on the wrong side of the road all the way to Bath. On our way, we saw the Jane Austen House Museum and Stonehenge. Bath was gorgeous, and the Roman baths blew me away. They were actually one of my favorite things that I did this entire trip. They had a really extensive museum associated with them, but just hanging out around the baths was really powerful.
We also, of course, surprise, surprise, went to the Fashion Museum and Assembly Rooms. I really did enjoy the museum with costume from 1700 to present. I particularly loved this Regency gown. I mean, look at it. Just absolutely stunning.
We stopped by Highclere Castle on our way back to London, and then had a few more days going shopping and seeing shows in London before my mom left.
I also took my mom around the Victoria and Albert Museum. It's a museum I've been to many times before, and I was actually previously there before she came to see a colleague. So we spent most of our time in the sculpture court, which is absolutely stunning.
Then for me, it was up to Portugal for another 24-hour layover.
Hello again. So I have made it to Lisbon on my layover. I have so much luggage. It's not funny. I think I have like 130 pounds of luggage. And I had a time finding the airport lockers today, but I made it to my Airbnb. I am here for a little under 24 hours since my plane was late leaving London. You probably saw all of my lovely London stuff. I didn't film any talking bits in London or Glasgow just because, one, I had so much to do, but two, I have this thing about filming in like spaces where other people are. I don't know. I'll get over it at some point, but I'm gonna go around Lisbon. It's like 5 o'clock right now. I need to find something to eat. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little apprehensive about it because I need to find something gluten-free and I don't speak Portuguese. The man, I said gracias. I said gracias to the man at the passport check, and he was like, "Oh, you don't say that, ma'am." And I was like, "Oh no, I've been here 5 minutes and I've already butchered the Portuguese language." So we're gonna go out. It's so hot. I have this lovely handmade vintage dress on that I got in Glasgow from Rip It Up Vintage, where I also got a wonderful shirt as well. That's my problem. I went vintage shopping a lot and charity shopping, and there were so many good things, and now I have literally 4 suitcases. So nobody's gonna change me. This is who I am. And I've been managing it pretty well. I've only had like 2 people ask me if I need help. And there was only one time when I really needed help. And that was on an escalator. Don't do what I did. So anyway, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna go into the center of town. I don't know what the situation is, if there's a metro or a bus or if I'm hoofing it, but I need to get something to eat because they don't have gluten-free options on planes. Yay! So let's go.
The first afternoon, I walked around the center of town and got to see the ocean. Lisbon was absolutely gorgeous, and I definitely want to come back. The Portuguese government definitely subsidized this flight, so I'd fall in love with their country, and to be honest, I think it worked. They had these gorgeous tiles everywhere, including on a lot of the houses. And the views were just amazing throughout the city. The next day, I popped right out of bed and I got myself over to the Museum of Costume. This museum had a wonderful collection. I had the place almost entirely to myself. When I was at the ticket counter, the man asked why I would choose this museum for my very short layover. I explained to him that I'm a costume conservator and I'm really into antique textiles. And he was so excited that he gave me a bunch of postcards of traditional Portuguese dress, which was so nice of him. I particularly love this early 20th century skirt. I mean, look at that fabric. It's absolutely gorgeous. They do not make it like this anymore. And a lot of the costumes in this museum were like this, just so detailed and scrumptious. They also had gardens associated with this museum, so I walked around those. And by that time, I was ready to pack up, grab myself one last gelato, and I got back to the airport. It was finally time to head to my new home, New York City.
Hello everyone, I am back in New York. I'm in my new apartment now. So I just kind of want to recap what happened afterwards, because I landed and I was basically in a fugue state for 2 weeks. So I landed from Portugal. I stayed at my cousin's for a week, and during that week I saw 10 different apartments. I ended up renting this one and ended up moving into it on the 2nd of September, and then started my job the Monday after. And as you can imagine, that was a lot. So yeah, I'm now in my New York City apartment. Things are getting back to normal. I'm no longer on the road. I'm getting excited about it. Last weekend, it's Saturday right now, but last Saturday I basically spent the entire day putting together furniture and, unpacking and everything like that. And then I did a full week of work, and now I'm just taking today. I'm sleeping, I'm filming, I'm going to Duane Reade and picking up random stuff that I forgot I didn't have. And yeah, I'm getting really excited about being in New York. Hopefully I can talk more about that in the future, and I'm excited to start making videos again because I have space and time, and it's gonna be great. As you can see, the walls are really blank right now, but I will be hanging the pictures. It's not 100% done yet, but if you enjoyed watching this video, if you want to see more from me, normally we talk about historic costume, textile conservation, other sort of fashiony textile things, you can hit the subscribe button down below. You can also like this video. You can go follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, here's to a new chapter. Bye.